Garrett.
Hey, what's up, Sierra? How are
Hey,
you?
Garrett. How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me?
I'm good. How are you doing? I can.
Thanks for giving me some of your time today.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Well, just to start, when you look at the current landscape of bluegrass music, what do you see? Because some people say it's changing and some people say it's business as usual.
Well, I definitely think it's changing, but I think that's music in general and that it has been changing, since before I was even a musician and part of it. I mean, you can tell that from even just going back and listening to albums and hearing how the music has changed, say, since Bill Monroe's day, and how even his music changed as it became, what we think of as bluegrass today. And I'm like, what we think of as bluegrass today, I feel like everybody thinks of that word as meaning something slightly different, depending on what section within bluegrass music you kind of grew up in,
Well, it's such a weird genre because it's so particular in its ways. Yeah,
it is. I also think, though, that my generation, a lot of my peers that, say, grew up loving, bluegrass music and that sort of 5-6 piece band format of, bass and mandolin and banjos and fiddles and all that, which is what I kind of think of when I think of bluegrass music. I feel like genre is becoming less and less important for my generation. And not that, we don't love bluegrass, because I know myself and, a lot of my peers and friends grew up in that world the same as me. But I think as far as, like, worrying about what's considered, quote, bluegrass, it sort of feels like it's becoming more inclusive than ever before, which I think is very healthy. I do, because I think, it's important for, the younger musicians to have freedom to just play good music, but yet be accepted by the wonderful community and group of musicians that I think of when I think of bluegrass. I mean, that's part of what made me love the music just as much as anything. I mean, I loved the music itself, but really getting to be part of that community of just amazing people and musicians and the spirit of it was such a exciting thing to be a part of as a young musician, So I want to feel like the next generation, even if what they're playing isn't, the most traditional thing in the world, that they can sort of be welcomed within the bounds of that word. You know what I mean? That bluegrass can still be a word that people think of as like roots music and acoustic music. And of course, nobody's trying to, say, oh, Bill Monroe. I know that's bluegrass, for some people, and that's all they'll ever see it as. But I do think it's healthy to kind of expand the walls of it just a little bit.
Well, I look at it as like, at least from my perspective, more of an attitude than actually having all the correct instruments on stage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But too, though, like to your point, for what's going on now, you have to look at it as the core is always going to be traditional, but you never know those portals people go through from the fringe,
Yeah, and, it's interesting because I feel like the music that I'm making at this point, people still kind of call me a bluegrass musician sometimes. I will forever feel associated with that word because that's where I got my foundation, and I'm very proud to be associated with bluegrass music. Although, the music I play now, I myself wouldn't really say it's bluegrass, so to speak. It's got bluegrass roots. Me as a musician, I have bluegrass roots, So inevitably that's going to come through in anything I try to do. As a musician, it's just a part of who I am, so it's always going to be there. That part's not going anywhere. But I don't tend to think of like the music I'm making right now as bluegrass in the sense of what I grew up with, and that's okay. But I think it's okay for me to also still be part of the bluegrass community because that's still, forever home to me in some ways.
Well, it's creatively, I would think that it wouldn't be fun to be pigeonholed rather than serve the song.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think, when I say it's becoming less and less important to my generation, for example, I do feel like, it's in a healthy way that's the case. It's a healthy thing that's the case, because I feel like people are just trying to think about what kind of music do I want to play, what kind of songs do I want to sing, rather than worrying about if it sort of fits within the bounds of a particular thing.
Yeah. Well, you won your second Mandolin Player of the Year award in a row. Yourself and Molly Tuttle and Becky Bueller and Flat Lonesome are really breaking some new ground in terms of the female performers in the genre. Is it that there's more prominent female artists today, or is it that the door's opening more, or is it both?
It may be a little both, honestly. I mean, definitely I think people are more aware of it, perhaps, than they once were, but I also think that I'm seeing more and more females actually taking part than ever before. And I've always, though I'm totally aware of the fact that, yes, my whole life I've pretty much looked around and many times been the only female in the room for a jam, or been the only female on the bill at a festival on an entire weekend sometimes. Like, there's been times where I've been the only woman, and I know a lot of my fellow ladies that I've talked to have felt that way, at times, but I'm also a big believer that, first and foremost, you just need to be the best musician you can be, regardless of male or female. Yeah. And so I feel like a lot of ladies are kind of, there's more women out there, so to speak, to sort of earn a seat at the table than ever before.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it as well, that the more and more that women really sort of dig in and decide this is what they want to do, I mean, inevitably we're going to see more and more women just be amazing musicians that kind of, earn their place, female or not,
Do you look at your platform as like a are you aware of the platform that you hold right now and what you can do with that platform in terms of the next generation of female musicians?
Well, it's interesting. It's not something that I think about on a regular basis. I mean, for the most part, I would just always try to follow my heart, try to be the best example that I could as a person, for younger musicians first and foremost, and then, as a musician and the way that I try to, run my career in those aspects. But, I mean, obviously, like, I do see a lot of young females and young girls that come up to the record table and talk to me after shows. And so, I mean, I do know that it's an important time to also, be a female example in the music scene, which is exciting. I love the thought of being able to inspire some young females in the way that I was inspired the first time that I, heard Alison Krauss's voice and just decided this is what I wanted to do for a living,
Yeah.
The first time I looked up at an album cover with Rhonda Vincent's picture on it, holding a mandolin, and I'd never seen that before. I mean, I remember being probably, 9 years old. I'd been playing mandolin about a year, and I didn't have a lot of women heroes on the mandolin because, there just weren't a lot in front of me to see. A lot of my heroes were and still are men,
yeah.
Which is okay, yeah. But it's exciting to see more and more females be interested in the instrument and really coming along and sounding fantastic. And, even just to see Rhonda's picture on that album cover, I remember being like, wow, that's going to be me someday.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be a grown woman playing mandolin. Wow, just to even visually see it was something I'll always remember, as being one of those, wow, kind of,
Well, what